Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host for the next 2 hours of radio. I am Kev Baker. We're coming to you live from Glasgow, Scotland. You know, that smart city over here in the UK. And what a show is developing tonight. I say developing because there's so much news going on in the world today and in the previous week or so that I couldn't possibly tackle all of these topics myself tonight. And ever since I covered the arrest of Julian Assange last week, I've been looking to bring people on to get their take on what they think is going down. And I've really got a good one for us tonight. Our good friend Charlie Robinson is right here on the show with us. Not 1 hour like last time. We get the full 2 hour experience with Charlie tonight. We're going to get into that. We're probably going to touch on this massive fire that we've seen over in France today as well. Coincidentally, on April 15th, the start of Beltane. We can get into that in just a moment. But before we get there, let me just give you a kind of brief rundown what's going to be happening on the week ahead on the show. Tomorrow, I'm hopefully going to be joined by the YouTube lawyer, Ian Corzine. He's hopefully going to be coming back onto the show to talk about the ratification of Article 13, or Article 17, as they're trying to rename it, and how that affects us all once we see that final document, just what the text is. And then on Wednesday night, can't think of a better week to bring my good friend Ryan Gable onto the show. We were going to get into cryptozoology and all that good stuff, but with what's been happening in France today, I imagine we'll be splitting the show between all of that stuff and some Beltane Fire Festival. So please tune in on Wednesday for that. And on Thursday, I'll be hanging out with the guys here, probably Joe, probably Scott, and we'll try to make sense of just what's been going on in the world, if that is at all possible. So back to tonight and our good friend Charlie Robinson. And for anyone out there who hasn't heard Charlie before, you're in for a rare treat. I absolutely love this guy, love his mind, love how he thinks. And he also happens to be the author of a pretty damn good book called The Octopus of Global Control. And, like I say, The Octopus of Global Control is a controversial and humorous book that takes quotes from over 500 witnesses to some of history's greatest events and uses them to piece together and expose a century-long plan for world domination. Now, Charlie had a front row seat to the fraud and the corruption in the mortgage industry during his career in Las Vegas real estate. And he goes on to credit John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, as the final piece of the puzzle that helped him to see how the American government operates as the enforcement arm for multinational companies. So, Charlie, welcome back to the show, sir. And I wish it was under better circumstances with some of the topics that we're going to be touching on tonight. How you doing, man?
Well, I feel the same way. It would be better if we were talking about how Julian Assange has been set free from the Ecuadorian embassy. Unfortunately, that's not happening. It would be nice if we were having a conversation about how the media was doing their job and was standing up for a member of their own that was exposing government lies. But of course, they're not doing that because they're hypocrites and cowards and bought off by their corporate overlords or by the CIA or whoever is telling them what to read and what not to read. But, we've come to expect this. I shouldn't say that we can't be surprised. This is who they are. So, they're showing us who they are, as they always do. I just wish that maybe one of these days, people would wake up. You would think that Julian Assange, this is, to me, this is pretty obvious that he was on the right side of history with this. And yet you'll still hear people on the nightly news, if they even talk about it, when they do mention it, he's a Russian agent or he's colluding with Russia. They're still selling this turd to the world that Russia swung the election. I got news for you, all you morons at the mainstream media. Hillary Clinton lost because Hillary Clinton is a horrible candidate. Okay, she didn't lose because of Russia. She didn't lose because of Julian Assange. She lost because Julian Assange exposed who she really is. her words, not his. He didn't say it. He just simply presented the evidence. I mean, it didn't. There were enough people that weren't voting for Hillary to begin with, but that didn't help her situation. 2 or 3 weeks before the election to have it come out. But of course, in typical mainstream media fashion, they try to go after the messenger and not the message. The problem is always, how dare Julian Assange throw this election in favor of Donald Trump, never talking about the contents of the emails that came out that showed that Hillary Clinton tends to surround herself with convicted pedophiles and others suspected of pedophilia. So maybe she lost because she surrounds herself with the dregs of humanity, and she actually looked like a worse choice than the orange man, Donald Trump. And that is difficult to do.
Absolutely. And, we were talking briefly before the show, and it's very telling how the media, not that we needed any more indication, but they're really showing their true colours now. Because here's one of their own, arguably the one that's been doing the real journalistic job for years now, exposing corruption, exposing crimes, never publishing anything that's been deemed fake news, in my opinion. And yet they're all celebrating like it's Christmas. This is the best thing that's ever happened. And not only that, Charlie, but I've become almost to the point where I'm almost shaking my head, because large swathes of the independent media, people that look at alternative research as well, it's become more about the character of Julian Assange as opposed to, his fruits. And if you're to judge somebody by their fruits, he's bipartisan, he'll go after anyone, any corporation. And it's almost as if, Julian Assange is global enemy, global bad guy, number one right now. And I really am struggling to wrap my head around this. Where are the charges of war crimes for some of the things that he exposed earlier on in the WikiLeaks documents that he released, the videos, etc. as well? We can look back to the fact he helped to show the American public just what the CIA and the NSA were doing, what toolkits they had to spy on their own people within their own borders. Yet here we are now, and it just feels like a big, giant smear campaign against a guy who really has been trying to bring the truth forward, something we all claim to be after. It's very confusing.
Well, it's sad, and it's actually shows how weak their argument is, that the best thing they can come up with now is that he's smearing crap on the walls and not cleaning up after his cat. That's what they've got. That's what they're going for. If that is even true, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. People in solitary confinement in prisons do the same thing because it's torture. Okay, and he's been cooped up in the cell. So even if he did, it's almost understandable based on the fact that he's been in solitary confinement for 7 years without access to direct sunlight and exercise and all these things, for fear that he would get snatched out of there or shot if he opened his curtains. So, this is, but Assange committed the cardinal sin when dealing with the United States media. And that is that he went after both sides of the aisle. Back in the early 2000s, when he was attacking the Republicans, when he was exposing their war crimes in the lead up into Afghanistan and Iraq and the collateral murder video and everything, MSNBC and CNN couldn't say nice enough things about him. They were his biggest fans. You get him. And then when he came out and exposed Obama's war crimes, then it was like, we've got to do something about this guy. This guy's the enemy. This guy's treasonous. First of all, he's not even a American citizen, so he can say what he wants and have it not be direct treason on this. But whatever. This is how the United States corporate media, and I would suspect the media around the world, really operates. As long as you're making fun of their enemy, then you're on their side. The minute you start making fun of their guy, then you're the enemy. When you make fun of both sides, then they both gang up on you. And if they can't take you down in the media, then they start to concoct, BS charges against you, and the next thing you know, you're sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy for almost a decade. So this is how it goes. And of course, the corporate media do not appreciate them being shown how to do their jobs by some guy that is wasting away half a world away from them. They don't appreciate this. This is like being on a soccer team and with the corporate media, and your best player is Julian Assange, and all the other players are telling the coach, take him out because he's making us look bad. I mean, it's just embarrassing. But this is what you get. This is you have to have that sort of warped mentality to go to work every day at MSNBC or Fox News or CNN, because your job is to tell lies and you know it. So you can't expect these people to look at this from some sort of level-headed perspective, because by their nature of having a job with that network, they are trained liars. That's what they do. Psychopathic, possibly. Sociopathic, definitely. Paid to lie, corporate whores. That's what they are. If you get that job, you get it because you play ball. The minute you start trying to go Tucker Carlson on somebody, they try to pull you off the air, try to yank your sponsors from you. You know, and I'm no huge fan of Tucker Carlson, but every now and then the guy tends to be telling the truth, it seems. So you've got Rachel Maddow now coming out, Assange is horrible. He's committed crimes against the United States and everything. No, he's exposed people who committed crimes against the United States. Let's get this straight. You're a journalist, Rachel Maddow. You think you are. You call yourself one. Do your job. Go out there and actually get into this and try and figure it out. Because if you did, what you would discover is that the crimes were committed by the governments and their attempt to cover it up. Not Julian Assange, not Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning. They simply exposed this. You know, in the 70s, Daniel Ellsberg did this with the Pentagon Papers, and he was treated like a hero by the press. They needed that. They said, we got to have this. This is part of press protection. Now what happens? Julian Assange does the same thing. The press turns their back on him. Because that's what you do when you're a bought off, paid for corporate whore, is that you have no real soul. You have no real integrity. So you're not going to stand up for one of your own, because as far as they're concerned, that's their competition. So they want that guy out of there, because how dare he come in here and start messing up our whole game with the truth? We can't have that. So it's embarrassing, but it's not surprising. I wish we could get away from this. The alternative media has been doing a good job of getting all these stories put up, but then once again, like anything, divide and conquer, try and take a percentage of the alternative media who either want to be contrarian or actually believe that Julian Assange is some sort of, this is some 5D chess where he's a CIA asset and has been all along. Explain how the CIA would benefit from this. Okay, he's exposing their torture tactics and their regime change playbook. So what, they're going to put him out there to expose themselves, and because it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. But the simple answer that Julian Assange is exposing these people because they're criminals and they need to be exposed. That's what we should really be focusing on, because that's the truth of the matter with this.
Absolutely. And you've got 70, I believe, British MPs who have drafted a letter, a motion. They're actually wanting Swedish authorities to reopen the rape investigation that was dropped a long, long time ago. Julian came out, he put a statement out about that. Those charges were dropped, and this is how desperate they are to get him on absolutely anything at all, Charlie. We often talk about the mockingbird media, and this here, for anyone who was ever in any doubt about there being a controlled media, this event, it highlights it all. Because, like you say, if he had kept on going after, say, Trump during that election campaign, and he had been exposing maybe crimes that Putin had done, or something the Iranian regime were doing with their nuclear program, he probably would have got the Daniel Ellsberg treatment. I would expect him to be up for a Pulitzer Prize or a peace nomination by now, not dragged out, by legs and arms, a man on each corner of him, taking him out bodily and throwing him into a waiting police car. It's just absolutely disgusting. And why there isn't more outrage about this, I truly don't know. It seems to me as well as like the media over here, that they're kind of butthurt. That's the best way of putting it. It's the most polite way of putting it, because you had Russia Today. They're the ones that actually had the footage of him being arrested, because none of our media were even interested in the fact that the rumours were circulating that Assange would come out. RT, they had a camera crew there for about a week. And of course, their footage has gone viral around the world. So it's almost as if they're more butthurt at the fact that somebody scooped them than the actual story here.
Yeah. Well, they should be. I mean, RT. I'll be in London at RT Studios in about a month, too. And they're of course. Whenever you watch anything that RT does on YouTube in the United States, right below the video, there's a little thing from Wikipedia that says RT is funded or partially funded by the Russian government.
And this is why
Thanks so
when
much.
I first seen that, I went to look at CNN and I went to look at MSNBC because realistically, it should say underneath there that back in 2014, please remember that Obama kind of eased the propaganda laws. And what you're really watching is an extension of our intelligence services.
Right. Yeah, Wikipedia should say, CNN is funded or partially funded by the CIA. I mean, if they're going to be honest about this and say that RT is sponsored by, is paid for by Russia, which of course it is. They never deny it. They don't. It's Russia Today. It's RT. But this is, so I'm not surprised that RT's there to cover it and that the rest of the media is sitting around the corner having a sandwich, asleep at the wheel, because this is what they do. They're not interested in breaking stories. They're not reporters. They're not investigative journalists. They're repeaters. They're given the script. This is what you read. It's a good job if you can get it, if you have no soul and you don't mind contributing to the problems of the world. You just get a script and read it for 30 minutes on the news at night. It's got to be the easiest job in the world, because there certainly is no digging in and no journalism going on. I mean, I doubt Anderson Cooper's ever picked up the phone to corroborate a source on something before he read it. He just read it because it was given to him. And maybe Rachel Maddow doesn't collect a paycheck from the CIA, but her bosses are told what to do by them, and so therefore it filters down to her. So not everybody, people will say, well, not everybody at the corporate media is on the CIA's payroll. You're right, not everyone is on their payroll, but their bosses are controlled by them, and their bosses' bosses are controlled by them as well. So you get the story that the CIA, MI6, MI5, whatever, whoever is in charge of the news, you get the message that they want, whether or not you're actually on the payroll or not. Because if you don't say this, if you don't read the story that your boss tells you have to read, then you're gone. So essentially, you are by default participating in this, and you are collecting a paycheck simply because you are willing to regurgitate the talking points that come to you from your bosses. So, Julian Assange is bad. Now they don't. It's actually perfect for the corporate media if you think about it, because the Russia collusion thing was coming to an end. They're on, pumping its chest and trying to keep it on life support, saying, well, there's more to it that we can't find. Nobody cares. Everyone has moved on to something else besides that. But now with Julian Assange, now they can say, we got the guy that was collaborating with Russia to throw the election. Here he is. And so it brings that stupid conspiracy theory back to life of Russian collusion in the U.S. election. And I love using the word conspiracy theory with them, because they love using it against people like us to go after us whenever we say something that they think isn't quite right. Well, guess what? The conspiracy theory is Russian collusion, and you are wearing tinfoil hats, you jerks at CNN and Fox News and MSNBC that spun this pile of garbage for almost 3 years. Congratulations, you guys look stupid, and you deserve to be shunned by the rest of the people. And hopefully, the listeners and the viewers will start to wake up to this, because I don't know if they're I don't know at what point the rest of the public realizes, hey, the people on your nightly news are lying to us every night about all kinds of things. It's hard to tell which is the truth and which are lies. Like, maybe the weather's the truth, but the rest of it is certainly lies. So, maybe people that understand what Julian Assange is about and saw that collateral murder video in which people were lit up by an Apache helicopter and murdered in front of us, maybe they will see that, maybe they will remember that and realize, hey, this is the guy that exposed this. This is the truth. Why are you guys in the mainstream media so critical of a guy that's done nothing but bring the truth forward? Oh, I know why. Because you guys are the enemies of the truth.
Absolutely. And of course, Donald Trump, who was quite outspoken in his support and for WikiLeaks during the campaign, especially towards the end. I watched a video the other day.
I love WikiLeaks.
Yeah,
I love them.
160 times, Charlie, or something like that. He said it in the final month. And then when he was
Wiki who?
Yeah.
Wiki what?
Then he's asked in the Oval Office about Julian Assange arrest. Don't know anything about it. No idea. What the hell is that all about?
This is just.
This is laughable, isn't it?
It's if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out. It is so frustrating. You and I have taken heat for pointing out Trump's major conflicts. Let's just call them outright lies. This is another one of. This is an embarrassing one because he was right for once when he was talking about how great WikiLeaks was on the campaign trail. A lot of people connected with that. A lot of people knew that. A lot of people were like, thank God we're finally hearing from a candidate that's actually going to tell the truth about what's going on. And that is WikiLeaks is doing a great job. I love WikiLeaks. Look at them exposing crooked Hillary. And boy, is she crooked. Yeah, she is crooked. And WikiLeaks did expose some of it. Not all of it. I mean, of course, people knew about that in advance. But now for him to backpedal, I mean, it does him it's a tremendous disservice. It makes him look like a jackass, and it makes him look like a liar, which of course he is. But does he not realize that he's on camera? There's cameras at these events where he's talking, right? He knows this, right? I hope so. He's on camera, like you said, like 160 times talking about WikiLeaks, and now all of a sudden, Wiki who? Never heard of it. Give me a break. I mean, it is. Not that he had a whole lot of credibility to begin with, but what's left of it, this certainly demolishes it, especially with the people in the alternative media. And I was hoping that I would hear from the alternative media that is pro-Trump, that they would go, whoa, this is a huge problem. I haven't heard that, though.
Same here, Charlie. Same here. And, he's almost been proven right as well. Again, Mr. Assange, because when he went into the Ecuadorian embassy, he said he was fearing extradition to the US. And within minutes of him coming out of there, despite 7 years of saying, no, that won't happen, well, you better believe it, extradition is now in motion. And when he gets over there, I really do fear what happens to him. And again, he's not American, like you said. So I've always kind of had a wry smile on my face when they say charge him with treason. How can you commit treason against a country that you're not even from? But what happens to him now? Because they're saying that he helped to crack the DOD password with Bradley Manning at the time. What do you think is going to happen, Charlie?
I think that if he comes back to the United States, he will be given a sham trial. He'll be found guilty on some trumped up charge, and he'll spend the rest of his life in a cage.
Yeah. I don't see any good end to this story. I really, really don't.
No, I see him in a Supermax facility in Colorado next to the Unabomber.
And of course, people question some of the material that comes out of WikiLeaks. And we have to really, look at the big picture here, because 7 years inside that embassy, you have to wonder just how much input, how much influence he's had over the organization that is WikiLeaks during that time. So again, I think we should judge him on what came out, before he went in there, early on when he went in there. And the fact that people are going back to his childhood and he grew up in a cult and things like that, yeah, cool. Nobody's perfect, but if we judge the guy by his fruits, I really don't see what people's problem is with this guy. I really don't.
No,
he's a strange character. Don't get me wrong, he's a strange cat, a really strange cat. But
yeah,
that doesn't make you a bad person.
I know. And after the break, we'll go into a list of some of the things that he did expose. Some of them, I had forgotten about. I had to go dig in and refresh my memory on some of these things. It's big news. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for every year since I think 2010 or so, and he doesn't have it. He didn't win one. Funny, Obama did, which presumably he wore while he was ordering drone strikes on wedding parties, and then hitting them, an hour later once the first responders arrived. So
the president of peace, or the predator president, as I sometimes refer to him as. No, absolutely. And of course, Charlie, you've got a website out now. You want to tell people all about that before we go to the break?
Yeah, the octopusofglobalcontrol.com. You can check out some videos. There's photos there. There's information on the book. I have you can buy the digital version there. It has links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble if you want to buy the print version. And And I also have a list of some of the favorite quotes that I use from the book, some good ones there. So if people want to check it out, it's good for a laugh.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you on my very favorite news organization, Russia Today. Can't wait for that, dude. That's going to be brilliant. And Russia Today, probably one of the few that are really, really outspoken on this topic. We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. Charlie Robinson.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kev Baker. We're moving into the second part of today's show now, already with Charlie Robinson, author of The Octopus of Global Control. And if you're just joining us, we've been really getting into the arrest of Julian Assange and what it means, what the bigger picture surrounding all of this is, and why is it that Julian Assange ended up cabal enemy number one, cartel enemy number one? Call him what you will. This guy is absolutely despised and feared by the elites. So what was it, Charlie? What was some of the stuff that he's published over the years that's really put him in the position he's in today?
Well, he hasn't just published incriminating stories about the United States, though it seems that way, especially when you're in the United States. You get this sort of skewed version of it. He's been an equal opportunity agitant. He has made people mad all around the globe, not because he's lying about them, but because he's telling the truth. He's not even really necessarily telling the truth. He's just letting their own words speak against them. So he's exposing things like India torturing Kashmir prisoners, the UK training Bangladesh death squads. This is back in 2010. The Pope refusing to cooperate in sex abuse investigations. So, of course, he's made the Vatican mad there. U.S. Special Forces working inside of Pakistan. He exposed that. He made no friends in the United States when he exposed the Guantanamo procedures and files about the Gitmo prisoners. He reported on the Bilderberg group meetings, and he published Syria files, Yemen files, the rough draft of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, put that out there, which got poked apart by once the public saw that. They just said this is crazy because it was supposed to be negotiated in secret. He's probably best known for the collateral murder video and exposing the United States waterboarding, aka enhanced interrogation, otherwise known as torture program. Recently, he exposed Vault 7. He talked about ICE in the United States, the immigration customs. And I say he's best known for the torture, but maybe he's probably best known for publishing the DNC email leak that was provided to him, they say, by Russian hackers. Everyone else that has looked into it says that the information was provided by Seth Rich on a thumb drive with all the information. And then lastly, recently, WikiLeaks has exposed the manual that the U.S. government has for how to institute a coup in a foreign country. So yeah, he's basically opened up the vault and pulled out all their dirty laundry and has exposed it for the world to see. And the governments of the world don't appreciate that because as we know, they're up to no good a lot of times. And they don't like these sorts of things to be brought out in the open. So if you're somebody like John Kiriakou, who exposes the torture program, you go to prison. And when you're in prison, you have to eat lunch next to the Aryan Brotherhood to keep yourself alive, which is what John had to do. If you're exposing the war crimes, they treat you like Edward Snowden, and all those guys that have come out of the NSA, Thomas Drake and Ray McGovern and people like that. Bill Benny, they treat you like garbage. And when you're Ray McGovern, you show up to the Gina Haspel confirmation and start speaking up against her. They take you out and dislocate your shoulder by throwing you to the ground when you're an 80-year-old man. So this is what happens to people that expose the government's dirty little secrets. And there are so many of them, and they're not limited to just one particular government. What WikiLeaks has done is they have made enemies with everybody, except for people that are interested in the truth.
And of course, we could look at the conveniently timed IMF loan that Ecuador just received. I believe, was it something like 4.2 billion?
Exactly. And that goes back to, one of my inspirations for writing the book was John Perkins, who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This is the economic hitman playbook. This is what they do. This is exactly what they do. In fact, not only it is so exactly what they do that in his book he focused on Ecuador on top of this. So it is for anyone that's trying to get an understanding of this. Forget my book. Buy John Perkins' book. His book lays it out. You will read that and it will change your life. It changed my life to understand the scam that the IMF and the World Bank use, that they go into countries with questionable dictators, people that can be corrupted, and they say, we're going to offer you a deal that's a really great deal to build a hydroelectric power plant in your country. In the case of Ecuador, this was the plan. And they made it look so good, like it was going to generate enough electricity, and the revenue would offset it. It would cover its cost. In a couple years, you'd be cash flow positive. It would all make sense. Everybody would benefit. Children would learn to read, but having electricity in their homes, all these things would be great. Never going to happen like that. The money was never, the deal was never meant to pencil out. It was always going to cost more than it was supposed to. It was never going to generate the revenue it said. That money from the IMF and World Bank that John Perkins would hook up this loan for these countries would never see its way actually to the country itself. It would go straight to the company he was working for, which was called Maine, which is a lot like Bechtel or Halliburton, multinational engineering firms that build these gigantic projects. So it would go to them. Of course, a chunk would go to the dirty leader that agreed to it. Now, what he talked about in his book was how the IMF and World Bank would first make that offer of the money, and if it didn't work out, then they would do what they call sending in the jackals. And next thing you know, Jaime Roldos his airplane would explode with a bomb in the back. And John Perkins told him, you need to accept this loan or they're going to come kill you. And he said, I understand that, but I'm not accepting this loan. And that part of that was how John Perkins transformed himself from being this economic hitman into seeing that what he was doing was horrible, and that he turned around and he has been on the side of humanity ever since. But when you see Julian Assange get dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, and then you read that the IMF has agreed to a loan. And by the way, this happened about a little over a month beforehand, so it wasn't like it happened on Friday afternoon as he's being dragged out, but it happened a month earlier. But regardless, you get the point. IMF has arranged for a $4.2 billion loan, which will probably never need to be paid back because we know what it is. It's not a loan, it's a bribe to Ecuador. And then just surprisingly, coincidentally afterwards, Julian Assange is thrown out of their embassy. I mean, it couldn't be any more transparent than this.
Absolutely. And of course, Julian Assange, far from stupid, highly intelligent man. And I may be having a Mandela effect. I'll need you to clear this up for me. But I'm sure at one point I remember talk of an insurance file. I even think I downloaded something onto my computer, my old hard drive at one point, and it was waiting for a key if anything happened to him. Is that right? I mean, is there some kind of like file? Did he keep some of the dirt for just this time?
Oh, nobody needs to tell Julian Assange how to protect himself. I'm sure he's got a dead man's trigger. People have speculated that the Gore Vidal book that he had in his hand was the code, was the cipher or whatever to crack the code and to release a dump of information. He probably has multiple batches of information. One set if he's ever dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, done. One set if he's ever convicted or extradited to the U.S., that's probably waiting somewhere. And one if he's ever suicided himself or killed by an intruder or something like along those lines, some very questionable death. I'm sure he's got batches set to go out. This is common. This is what you do when you deal in these sorts of issues. You either never say anything about the information that you have, or you put it out and just immediately. But if you threaten to put it out, that's when you get yourself killed. And so I'm sure Assange understands that. And I'm sure that the people that are in positions of power that are worried about his the information that he still has, are probably scouring the world trying to find these batches of documents that are sitting around just waiting for the dead man's trigger to be pulled so that they can come out, because you got to believe that those will be the most explosive ones. And it's probably a bargaining chip that he has as well to make sure that he stays alive. But then again, to stay alive and be in solitary confinement in some federal prison is no way of living. So it might be that he doesn't actually have to be killed to trigger these releases of documents, but just has to be put in a situation that is worse than death, and that is living the rest of your life in solitary confinement in some federal supermax prison somewhere.
Yeah, I must admit, when the arrest itself happened, I didn't see it live. It was maybe a couple of hours later that I was informed about it. But since then, I have been almost, sounds dark, but every morning when I get up now, Charlie, it's one of the first things I check, because I do fear he might never even make it to trial, dude. Wherever he's been held right now, who knows what might happen in the meantime. And that aside, moving forward into the future now from this point forward, in your opinion, obviously we're speculating here, but how much can we trust WikiLeaks as an organization from this point forth? Because like I was saying to you during the break, they've all watched what's happened to Julian, and now they've got a decision to make. Do they become the next martyr? Do they become the next Julian Assange? Or is it more likely that they'll just take the briefcase of money, they'll start working for the CIA, MI6, Mossad, and they'll put out exactly what they're told to put out?
Well, it's a good question, and it does call for us to speculate on this. But my guess is that you should always be critical of any information that comes out. But I would though WikiLeaks has had a spotless record in the past, I would keep my eyes open for some disinformation coming through them, because this can only go on for so long. It can only be organic and legitimate for so long before the powers that shouldn't be, as Joe Joseph says, comes in and takes them and compromises the situation. We saw that with Occupy Wall Street. We saw that with the WTO riots. We saw that with, it only goes for so long. Yellow vests, I'm sure, are they're in the process of trying to compromise them. It's organic and it's real for a while, and then you get to the point where they're starting to throw Molotov cocktails and flip over cars, and then you realize, okay, these are the bad guys that have been injected into the situation to get the whole thing shut down. I would be looking at WikiLeaks from this point on skeptically, just not because of them, not because no sort of critique of them or their reputation, but just because this is how things go. That you could see limited hangouts, you could see them exposing partial truths of stories. Because whoever is in charge of that organization now, whoever's making the call on things, can see they don't need a crystal ball to see what's in their future. Their future looks a lot like Julian Assange's future, whatever that may be. It may be in a cage for the rest of their lives. And do they really want to do that? They might say it's worth it. They might say their commitment to the truth is stronger than any sort of fear that the governments can bring down on them. They might say that they're 100% committed to it. And I hope that's the case. I hope that we continue to get the truth from WikiLeaks. But the problem is now you have to question, who's been compromised. And that's the thing about these operations, is that even if they haven't been compromised by the CIA, MI6, and all these groups that want to compromise it, just the fact that you start to think that they could be is enough to start discrediting their information. So it's really insidious and it's devious, and that's what the intelligence agencies do. It's funny that they call themselves intelligence agencies, but all they're doing is spreading lies. Their entire existence has got to be, I feel bad for the guys that are good people that go to work for someone like the CIA. And they probably, come across something and go to their boss and say, "We got this. I found a guy running a sex trafficking ring," and the boss just says, "Yeah," runs it through the shredder and says, "Well, don't worry about these things. We don't focus on that." And and then they get discouraged and realize that they're just part of a big machine, and this machine's job is disinformation, and they're very good at it. So I would be, to answer the question about WikiLeaks, to wrap that part up about whether or not to trust them. trust but verify, right? Is that what Ronald Reagan once said? Double check to make sure from this point on, because they're ripe for a compromise program.
Absolutely. One good thing, if he gets extradited, at least he'll be closer to Pamela Anderson, right?
Yeah.
That's another
I
weird,
don't trust at all.
Yeah, that's a weird part of this story.
She's got MK Ultra written all over her.
I have to agree with you. Absolutely agree with you there. And of course, she turns up at the embassy and everything else. Just a weird part of the story. But another angle I want to approach here, we go back to Chelsea Manning and Bradley Manning at the time, who had all of this information, the collateral murder, as you called it, video. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure how true this is. Maybe you'll be able to clear this up. But wasn't it the case that he went to, or he at the time, she now went to the mainstream media with all of this information, and none of them would touch it?
Yes, that's true. They wanted nothing to do with it. So he, at the time, Bradley Manning, said, well, if you guys don't want it, maybe someone else does. And WikiLeaks wanted it, and WikiLeaks put it out, and of course made the mainstream media look bad. That is just the epitome of, that's who the mainstream media is. That's who they are. They don't work for the people. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in propaganda. You mentioned the Smith-Mundt Act of 2012. It was implemented in 2013 under Obama. That was the reconfiguring of the Propaganda Act. The Smith-Mundt Act prevented propaganda in the United States prevented the CIA and the FBI, I guess, from using propaganda against their own people. And in 2012, they put together the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which took that part out and allowed for propaganda to take place by the American government against its own people. So why would they do that? Why would they change the law? Why would they do? Well, they changed the law because they intended to use it. They intended to do that. They didn't change the law just for it to sit around and not be used. I mean, they specifically went out of their way. It wasn't expiring. It wasn't some act that was set to expire the last day of 2012. It would have been just fine. They intentionally went in there to manipulate it and change it so that they could use propaganda. So you have to ask yourself, why would they do that? The answer is because they want to legally be able to lie to the people. That's what they want. There's no other explanation for it. I've never heard any explanation for the changes to the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act that was anything other than the legalization of propaganda within the United States. There is no acceptable answer for why that was done other than they want to be able to lie. That's it. So, what do you have after that? You have a rash of school shootings. You have a rash of events that come out that get disproven pretty quick. You have a bunch of events that are totally staged. Boston bombing was totally a fake event, 100% fake event. Boston Globe reported on Twitter on 2 different occasions before the bombs went off. There will be bombs going off at the library. There's a drill simulating bombs at the library. 2 Twitter messages about that. Everyone comes out and says, oh, the Boston bombing is such a tragedy. No, it isn't. It was a drill. It's so obvious. Well, why? How can they do that? They can't lie to us. Yes, they can. They can now. They can lie to you. They absolutely can through the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. So all these things are part of it. It's the media. The media is in conjunction working with the government. And, it used to be that the media checked the government. Those days are gone. And that happened with the consolidation of the media into these 6 companies, 5 now, from 40 down to 5 over the last, 30 years or so. And that's had a lot to do with it. And so what we're living in a world where when you turn on your news at night, they are actively working against your best interests. And that's a scary place to be.
It really is. It's truly scary. And just, as a taste of what's going on in your country, I've heard Tucker Carlson. He's kind of spoke up for Julian. That's it.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I haven't heard anyone else in the mainstream over there. Now, I've kind of boycotted Alex Jones ever since he jumped back on the Q train. What's he saying about this? Because I would hope that he's having a go at Donald Trump about it.
Well, I don't know. He was just on Tinfoil Hat. I did Tinfoil Hat, and Sam told me before. He said we're gonna have Alex Jones on. It's a big secret and everything. And then he came on, and of course, it didn't take long before YouTube pulled the video down, as they do. I don't know what Alex Jones is saying about this. I haven't really watched him all that much either. He kind of lost me when he backtracked on the how do I say, the school in Connecticut issue.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
So I don't know what he has to say about it. Frankly, I don't know that I care too much about what Alex Jones has to say about it right now. I'll have to check it out. I certainly hope he's saying that what's being done is a crime. What's being done is an attempt to silence, free speech. But I don't know these days. I don't know if I can even assume that he's saying that. I hope so. But yeah, Tucker Carlson is saying that. Tucker Carlson is coming out and is reminding people that Julian Assange, isn't being charged. This arrest has nothing to do with Russia, and it has nothing to do with anything that the media is trying to make it out to be. It has to do with some trumped up charges out of Sweden, where he was wanted on rape that was later dropped, and they said he jumped bail, and he was brought in on a bail jumping. I mean, this is the equivalent of Al Capone going to prison for tax evasion. They're going to try and get whatever they can, as weak as it is, to get him in custody, as they have, and then find a bunch of other charges to make it stick and keep him without bail, or extradite him to the U.S. where he gets a show trial. If he's lucky, he gets a show trial. But what's funny about this whole thing from the U.S. point of view, on your corporate mainstream media at night, the lead story is not Julian Assange. It was on Friday, but it's gone. They're not talking about it anymore. They don't talk about it at all. They're pretending like it doesn't even exist, because they don't want people thinking about him. And that's a big change from the way it was back in 2005, when the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world were coming out and praising Assange because he was pointing out the war crimes that the Bush administration was involved in. But now, once he switched over to the Obama, then now they're saying, well, he can't be trusted. Which of course is, to be expected from them. But that's one thing that you might be surprised about. It is not the lead story on the nightly news here. It's not on the news anymore here. You can find it online if you dig, but it is not coming up. It was on Friday night. There might have been a little bit about it Saturday, and it was gone.
And of course,
now it's replaced by Tiger Woods wins the Masters again, and Julian Assange is off the news altogether.
Great comeback by Tiger, but I tell you what, if Julian Assange somehow gets out of this, that'll be a better comeback altogether. It'll be 10 times the comeback.
He could caddy for Tiger Woods. It'd be the greatest story ever.
I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you. I find it no coincidence either that in the same week as Assange was arrested, we had the UK coming out and talking about the fact they want to create an internet czar to make it a safe space. They are going to tell us what we can and what we can't watch. And Russia Today, again, only days later, published a story about how if you're deemed to have watched anything that is classified as terrorist material, and you have to ask what is classified and who classifies terrorist material, you could face up to 15 years in a British jail. Now, I don't think all of this happened in the same week just by coincidence, Charlie. And, we really are looking at the death of our free speech, be it on the internet, be it anywhere. Yeah. It is. When they can't win the argument with you, they just try to silence the debate altogether. They don't want to have it. They can't. If they can't win it, they don't want to have. This is the reason why I'm going on RT in a month on Renegade Incorporated and not on MSNBC. Because if I started saying the things I'm saying right now on MSNBC, they'd cut my mic halfway through, they'd superimpose a tinfoil hat over my head, and then they'd play circus music in the background to make me look like a lunatic. So because the fact that I, coming out and talking about these things as if everybody should know them is not wanted. They're not interested in that. They're interested in a very select narrative. And no, of course, it's no surprise that the UK is talking about having an internet czar. What could possibly go wrong with that, right? The internet czar who's gonna tell everyone what they can and can't see. Don't we have that already? Isn't his name Mark Zuckerberg? Exactly. You know, he doesn't even seem to be too bothered about all of this. You would think a platform like his, it would be set to be eradicated, right? Well, not if he wasn't part of the establishment, the Illum Tech Natty, as I like to call it. And you can go back to Bilderberg in 2013 in Watford when they had all of those cats there. You know, we're now starting to see all of those plans that were put in place in 2013, 2014 coming to fruition. That's my opinion anyway, Charlie.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And one of the things that they talked about at those meetings, I think maybe in 2015, was the Internet ID card. And I've been saying for a while, and it's in my new book, that my hunch is that there will be some sort of terrorist-related event that would happen through the use of the internet, and then therefore they would use that as they would say, well, if this person wasn't anonymous, then it would have been stopped. So everybody has to have the Internet ID card. And after watching that Christchurch thing come up on the Facebook live stream, I thought that could have been one of those. It didn't turn out to be directly connected, but I see events sort of like that being the trigger event to kick off not just the need for the Internet ID card, but to make people beg for it.
Well, there's talk of if you're going to live stream over on Facebook, it's one platform I don't live stream on, but they're going to start taking people's ID over here in the UK as well. If you want to log into any other pornography website other than Pornhub, you have to use your ID. So we're very rapidly moving down this road towards an Internet ID. It's something myself, you, so many people in alternative media have warned about for some time. You can look at Article 13, 17 passing as well. Another part of this, all coming at us at once. And so is our number 2 already, folks. Can you believe it? Johnny Whistle's on the way, and we'll have more with Charlie Robinson. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. 1 hour down, 1 to
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into hour number 2 now on today's Kev Baker Show. Absolutely amazing stuff so far from Charlie Robinson, author of The Octopus of Global Control. Visit his website by the same name, www.theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. You can follow him on Facebook, over on Twitter. I urge you all to do so. Very much cut from the same cloth as myself, a highly cynical man like myself, and very sarcastic with it. Loves to spread his information with a little hint of comedy as well, and that's what makes him the perfect, absolutely perfect guest for the Kev Baker Show. But it's not just me and Charlie anymore, because we have the Whistler back with us. And Johnny, I know you were really disappointed you couldn't join in the other night when we were first discussing Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Myself and Charlie have really kind of been standing up in defence of the man tonight, despite the fact it feels like the whole world are against him. So what do you think of this, Johnny, the arrest of Assange and those pictures we seen the other day, you know? First time really seen him in 7 years. He looked hellish, dude. You're muted up, Johnny.
Sorry, Kev. Yeah, he did look pretty drastic when they brought him out of there. But again, I mean, you could even see him smiling. It was as if they were manhandling him when they looked really bad, but he was okay when he was smiling. But it's the whole arrest thing, Kev. Do you know what I mean? You've got the Ecuador getting, what is it, 42 billion, and
4.2 billion.
Obviously sold him. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, Kev, what they've sold him for, that 42 billion is not enough for what it's going to mean for freedom of speech, because it's all going to go, and you're never going to have news again like in investigative journalists anymore. You can forget about that, because if you do, Assange has just proved that this is what you'll get if you're successful.
Exactly. You know, those images, Charlie, that'd be enough to put me off if I was, you know, internet savvy and website savvy and I was going to set up the next WikiLeaks. I'd be thinking twice now. And I think that's why, you know, they kind of made it so high profile at the time, went round the world. This was a message being sent to everyone, dude.
For sure. Yeah. And what's happened since then has been that a lot of people with either in support of WikiLeaks or maybe even working with them, have taken down a lot of Ecuadorian websites. If you noticed over the last couple days, they hit the Central Bank of Ecuador website, took that down, took down the Ministry of the Interior, took down the Ecuador Assembly in the UK, and took down the government of Ecuador's websites, just crashed them. And that reminds me of 2010, that Operation Avenge Assange, when they went after PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa, when they wouldn't take the payments anymore for people that wanted to donate to WikiLeaks. They decided that they would cut them off financially, and then people, I think it was 10,000 people launched a DDoS attack against PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard, and took those sites right down to the ground too. So, you mess with the truth community and this hacktivist community, and they can get nasty too. They can play ball. Now, of course, the CIA, probably, the GCHQ and all these companies, they have great hackers working for them, of course, because they can pay them as much as they need to. But the people that are really on the side of truth in that hacker community, they don't have a problem banding together and anonymously taking down websites and trying to crash the people that are going after Assange. I mean, hell, it's the least. It's about all they can do, really, at this point.
No, I absolutely, I agree with you there. And before we went to the break, I was meaning to ask you, what's the latest with Bradley/Chelsea Manning now? I mean, is she still detained indefinitely, or is she back out again?
Yeah, she's still in prison, or still in jail. I don't know how you want to classify it.
A cage.
A cage. Yeah, still a cage is a cage. Still there. They can detain her for 18 months with a 6-month extension, and then after that, they have to trump up some new charges. No pun intended. But I'm sure that will happen. So it's one of those somewhat indefinite detentions, right? So that it has an expiration date. But if you know anything about the way the government and the legal system in the United States operates, there's two sets of laws, right? If they want to keep you in prison on something, they will find a way to do that. And so we'll see. It seems like they're trying to tie up loose ends. And the reason why is very simple. People want to know, why are they so hell-bent at getting Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange? It's a very simple answer. They make the United States government look bad. They expose their lies, and they show who they really are. And that just they can't stand for that. They have to get rid of these people. So it's very simple. And where it really got ramped up was when Hillary thought she was going to be the president. And the way they see that is that Assange prevented Hillary from becoming president. Now, that isn't necessarily true. This information came out that was damaging about her. But listen, if you don't want damaging information to come out about you, don't participate in damaging types of things. Don't have John Podesta as your campaign manager. Don't have guys like this sending emails back and forth to each other talking about flying in $65,000 worth of pizzas and hot dogs from Chicago for parties. I mean, these things get out and people read it and they go, oh, look, these people are a bunch of psychotic pedophiles. Maybe we shouldn't vote for them. So yes, on the one hand, Julian Assange was in part responsible for Hillary Clinton not being president, but the overall responsibility for that lies with Hillary Clinton. If she didn't want a bunch of bad things coming out, don't do bad things. It's very simple.
Ever since the election, Russian collusion, that's been the talk. Yet the definite election shenanigans that were going on were exposed in the emails, right? Because she basically rigged the Democratic primaries. Now, isn't that criminal?
Yeah. Yeah, that's criminal. No, it's so ironic that Hillary Clinton is at this event this weekend with her sexual abuser husband, Bill Clinton.
And she looked like something out the Thunderbirds with that crazy suit she had on. What was that all about? It was like 3 times too big and her little pea head like Beetlejuice sticking out the top.
I don't know. There's something very wrong with everything about that couple. There's just everything about them is wrong. But her coming out and saying Assange is going to need to pay for his crimes is just the ultimate in hypocrisy. To hear Hillary Clinton talking about how somebody else needs to pay for their crimes is enraging. Okay, it is the most preposterous thing that she could ever say. But that just goes to show how completely and utterly detached from reality she is, because she believes it. She believes that Julian Assange needs to pay for his crimes, but she also believes that she has committed no crimes. They're going to study her in textbooks for years to come, in psychological textbooks, because she is a case study in psychopathy. It is unbelievable the type of person she is. And she almost became president of the United States, which is hilarious to me, that she got beat by Donald Trump. I mean, that's just a whole different story. But for her psychosis is so all encompassing that she just can't even take a step back to realize that, oh, maybe I shouldn't say Julian Assange needs to pay for his crimes, because I myself have so many skeletons in my closet it looks like a cemetery. Nuts.
It's crazy. And Johnny, I see you sitting there smiling and laughing as well. We're no fans of the Clintons, right? We're no fans of any of them, right?
No, Kev, every one of them are absolute psychopaths.
Scumbags.
One's working for the other. You'll never ever get to the bottom of it. But the good thing is, I mean, for Julian Assange, if Julian Assange doesn't have that information at hand, Kev, nobody would ever have heard about it. And these hacker groups, it's putting these things out, I take my hat off to every single one of them, because we need more. We need more people awake to just how bad it really is. We know, but there's too many people, Kev, that are just too blind to this, that they know that nothing is going on behind their backs. You think everything, the world is all sort of rosy, the government's fantastic, as long as I'm getting my money, do you know what I mean, in a Monday or whatever from my government, everything's fine. But
And that's the thing, you know, a lot of this stuff we were left to speculate about at the best of times, Charlie. And it's only thanks to WikiLeaks and the people who gave them the information that we ever got confirmation that our worst fears were correct. They are corrupt as hell, you know? And I forgot where I was going there. I'm not excited about having the whistler back on. I had something really good to go into there, but I forgot it, Charlie.
Well, look at the videos. You know, look at that video. No, like you said, Johnny, nobody would know about the collateral murder video. Nobody would see that if it hadn't been for Bradley Manning at the time leaking it to Julian Assange. But like we said before, offering it to the mainstream media, and they want nothing to do with it. They don't want another Milo massacre.
That's where I was going. That's where I was going. Seth Rich, you know,
right?
It's another Bradley Manning, isn't it? Because where would he have gone? Where could he possibly have taken that information if it wasn't been for a platform like WikiLeaks and Julian Assange? Because we know that the mainstream media, controlled by the Democrat Party, they would never have published that, dude. So we would never have seen anything of that.
No, he skipped the first part, the part that Bradley Manning did, which was going to the mainstream media with the information first, then getting turned down, and then going to WikiLeaks. He just skipped the first part. He went straight to WikiLeaks because he knew what would happen. There's no way they would have published anything having to do with Hillary Clinton. Maybe Fox would have, but even then, it had to come from somebody that had cleaner hands. And WikiLeaks, although a lot of people in the mainstream media would have you believe otherwise, has clean hands. The information they've put out, they've never lost a lawsuit. They're batting 1,000 here. They've put out great information. They stand behind it because, you know, they vet it. They get it from different sources, and it's not their information. They're simply putting it out. So, you know, he obviously, Seth Rich knew he couldn't go to the mainstream media. He knew the game well enough. He should have known that. You know, when you do this, maybe he did know that when you do this, you take your life into your own hands.
And
but
you know, for
it's
people,
a sad thing.
For people who fear he might be some kind of double agent, something like that, it would make more sense to me then that you leave Julian Assange in play. Yeah, you can paint him as a kind of bad guy, all the rest of it, that you're enemies with him. But if they, the cabal, the cartel, whatever you want to call them, if they had been using him to put out disinformation, he would still be free to do it just now. He would still be doing it.
I think so. I think you're right. I think that if he was on their team, they would want him in the game.
Yeah.
And by putting him in jail, it takes him out of the game.
Makes me wonder, what do they fear that he still has? You know, we hear about the 30,000 emails that we never got from Hillary's servers and things. Now, I can't tell you that Assange has any of those, but it makes you wonder what they fear he still has. Be it the insurance file, be it something else. I think there's almost like a piece of information that we're missing. You know, there seems to be something that's going to come along in the future. We'll go, aha, right, this is why they were really after him then.
Yeah, and that it's interesting to speculate on what that could be.
You see, we're back to
some of
speculating
the-
again, right? Because we don't have a website anymore that'll say, "Yep, there's the documents." You were right, guys.
Well, one of the things that
speculate.
did just come out that's in those WikiLeaks files that has nothing to do with politics at all, but is interesting and borderline sort of offensive at the same time, is the documentation showing that Steve Jobs had HIV. Did you see that? That is unbelievable.
This was
And
actually news to me today when you had kind of put this up. Talk to me about this, dude.
There's a folder in the files that WikiLeaks has put out lately. I don't know when they exactly put it out. Some people have said it was in response to Julian Assange getting taken in, and other people said no, the files had been out before that, but just hadn't been very well publicized. But anyway, in those files, there's one that says Steve Jobs HIV, and you click through it. There's two different documents. One doesn't really show all that much, and the second one shows that he checked the box next to, whether he has HIV/AIDS, and this was in 2006, I think it was. I'd have to double check, but anyway, it's in there. It seems to me, I have to say, it seems to me like a tremendous invasion of privacy to put that out. So that might be a questionable one. I don't think that anyone is advocating that is necessary for like the greater good to know that. It's more salacious than anything. It's interesting and
it's not
sad.
in fact, it's not their usual style.
No, it isn't their usual style, actually.
Very telling.
I was a little bit surprised to see that. In fact, not only was I surprised to see it, the first thing I thought was that it was intentionally put in there as disinformation, or in a way to sort of poison the well, so to speak, and make it look like, oh, geez, those guys at WikiLeaks, they'll just report on anything, even if it's something as private as that. But and that might be the case, but it's definitely in there. Whether they added it to it or someone else did, I don't know.
No, anything else in there that you came across that was of interest, Charlie?
Oh, I'd have to go back through. The one thing that really was that I thought was fascinating was the United States manual on how to conduct a coup by using the financial services, the IMF and the World Bank, and sanctions as a tool for regime change. That's straight out of my, coincidentally, it's a chapter straight out of my book. Sanctions as a tool for regime change is the name of the chapter. And that's exactly what WikiLeaks discovered was the United States manual for how to do it. And that's terrifying. But of course, we knew that something like that existed out there somewhere in the world, because they've got that sort of down to a science. As they're preaching against Russian collusion in the United States election, they have their own field manual on how to overthrow and conduct coups in foreign countries. It's just utter hypocrisy, but not to be
you want
nothing surprising.
You want hypocrisy. It's the fact that if you're kind of defecting from Russia or an enemy of Putin, you can come to London, get put up in a 4 million kind of house in Kensington, get MI5, MI6 protection, and basically live like a lord for the rest of your lives, and yet look at the treatment of Julian Assange, because he was going after Western countries.
Why do you think I'm coming to London? They're giving me a house.
Dude,
all I have to do is
I'm made
say,
up. You're on my.
Assange was a Russian.
Yeah, you're on my parent network, Russia Today. You know that the rumors are definitely going to go into overdrive now about the two of us, probably the three of us working for Russia, right? You know it. As soon as you appear on there, dude, it's knackered, man. You might end up in a cell next to Assange. Maybe they'll drag you into the next Russian investigation, Charlie. Because there's bound to be another one, right?
Well, for sure, of course. I mean, we can't until Hillary Clinton comes clean and accepts some responsibility for her own failed presidential run, we are going to continue to get Russia collusion. And as long as the military information terror complex needs another boogeyman to justify their $1 trillion budgets, we're going to continue to have a manufactured one like Russia. Look, Russia's no angel, right? They've got their own things that they're doing, and they certainly have spies, and they have a vested interest in keeping tabs on the United States and the UK and everybody. But as far as them being the global boogeyman, I think that they are. I think that people got a little bit of ISIS, fatigue, and they're no longer scared by the imaginary boogeyman out in the Middle East, and instead they've decided to bring back the Russian bear.
Well, over here in the UK, we're trying to resurrect the ISIS boogeyman today. I was coming out of the local grocery store, and they've got the newspaper stand, and one of the British soldiers stood there, combat gear. They are going back into Afghanistan now because of the rise of ISIS. Yeah, it wasn't only just a couple of weeks ago we were told that ISIS were a done deal, that they're gone. And I'm pretty sure that the Taliban pretty much take care of everything in Afghanistan now. Anyway, must be those opium lines drying up, Charlie. Must be something going on that we need to get back in there, eh?
Maybe didn't they find like an Afghani giant, right? Isn't that the rumor that I read on the internet that they found?
The giant of Kandahar. That's one of my...
of Kandahar, right? They have to go back in there and get him because apparently he's been converted to ISIS. That's a more realistic story than anything else that they're pushing.
The ginger giant of Kandahar. Brilliant, man. Absolutely love it. But we're probably lots more we can move on to, unless you've got anything else you want to say. Your final word on the Julian Assange thing, Charlie, before I get your take on some of the other news going on right now.
I think Julian Assange has done for the United States people, for the people of the world, what we hoped the media itself would do, and they have abandoned their job, and he's had to do it for them. He does it better than them. He does it on a very small operation. He's embarrassing to them, and I think he's a hero. And I think that the information that he put forth exposed how our governments really behave when they think that nobody's watching. I think that that's important. I think that's the job of the press. The press doesn't do that anymore, so somebody has to. And I think it's a crime that they've got him locked up. And I think that what they're doing by arresting him and making this big deal out of it is they're only pointing the spotlight on what he's been talking about even more. If they really wanted this to go away, they would have opened the door and let him walk out. But like most things, they handle it wrong because you have guys like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton calling the shots, and they want this guy dead. Okay, so they want him back in the United States, and they will do whatever they can to make that happen.
Johnny, your thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking, Charlie, do you think maybe Assange has maybe made some contingency plans if anything like this happens, or if he disappears never to be seen again, that some of the stuff that's not been released yet will be released?
Yeah, I think he's got pictures of John Bolton with a goat. I think he's got pictures of Mike Pompeo, at an all-you-can-eat buffet going back for his fourth plate. I think he's got some damaging evidence on a lot of people that he's holding back on. I mean, we've seen watching United States military troops shoot up a bunch of unarmed civilians is bad. Wait till you see what he's got on the people in power. I would imagine it's even more damaging. I would imagine, and this is speculation, but I would imagine he's got a hold of whatever was on Anthony Weiner's laptop, and if he's got that, then he's got the goods on Hillary. Anyone that is out of their minds in enthusiastically pushing for Assange to be brought back and tried, those are the people you need to look at, because no doubt he has the goods on them, because otherwise they wouldn't be as fervent in their attempts to put this guy behind bars. So guys like Bolton, guys like Pompeo, Clinton, all the talking heads on the mainstream media, he's got the goods on them.
Wasn't it
sure.
Hillary Clinton? Maybe we covered it. I'm not too sure, but I think I ended up going into Hillary Clinton looking like something out the Thunderbirds with that suit she had on. But didn't she actually want to drone strike Julian at one point?
Oh, yeah. She said, can't we just drone this guy? That's hilarious.
Let
that's
that sink in, people.
That's conspiracy to commit murder.
Yeah, let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Here's a guy, what's he done wrong? He showed the world he showed the world their crimes, and they openly talk about drone striking him. This from the same woman who openly sat and laughed about the murder and assassination of the leader of Libya. So we shouldn't really be too surprised, right?
No, we shouldn't be surprised at all, because this is what you get. If someone like if any, like the three of us say, can't we just drone this guy? That's an empty threat, right? We don't have access to drones. So when the Secretary of State says, can't we just drone this guy? She means it. She's asking the question, are we legally allowed to hit this guy with a drone strike? She's not just speculating and being, flippant about this. She's actually calling for somebody to tell her whether or not she can get away with this. I mean, we saw, like you said, we saw what she did with Gaddafi, right? We saw he died. Yeah, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. You're talking about murder. You're talking about murdering somebody for whatever their reasons were. I'm sure it had to do with running guns and gold and the gold dinar and all those things that the United States has big problems with. But at the end, we're talking about murder. And she's also advocating for the murder of Julian Assange, and she should be in prison for that.
They showed us over and over again the footage of Muammar Gaddafi getting murdered in the street. Yet in New Zealand and Australia, you can get 15 years for watching the live stream of the Christchurch shooter.
Yeah.
Do we see the hypocrisy again, folks?
Yes, but they want to protect our virgin eyes from seeing violence. As I watch the Twin Towers come down for the 3,000th time over and over again on the nightly news, or airplanes hitting it. Yeah, but they want us to... if in the Facebook Live thing too, about how, he broadcast for 15 minutes. If I went Facebook Live and started to take my pants off, by the time I got them around my ankles, my live feed would be cut. Okay. So the fact that they kept that thing going was because they wanted people to see it. I don't care what anyone says about that.
I agree with you.
The videos, they wanted you to see it until there were big problems with the video. Then they didn't want you to see it. Then they didn't want anybody to see it. And their overreaction to that was so suspect that made you think, why are you guys so concerned about that? Oh, well, we don't want you to see violence. Really? The nightly news is nothing but violence. Now, all of a sudden, you're protecting me? Give me a break.
And how long until something like WikiLeaks is deemed a terrorist organization? Which would mean the likes of me and Johnny here, for reading any of their leaks, would face 15 years in a jail cell, probably beside Julian Assange. Just for looking at this information. We need to really pay attention to how important this is, folks. Doesn't matter about your feelings about the character of Julian Assange. I don't care what Julian Assange has done in his childhood. I don't care what he gets up to in his spare time. These documents were not produced by him. They were given to him. All of these documents. He's not the whistleblower. He's the somebody that the whistleblowers could go to. And what it means for all of us, who only knows? We'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Segment of today's Kev Baker Show with Charlie Robinson, and I've got my co-host back. Johnny Whistles is here as well. Don't forget, visit Charlie's website over at theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com and check him out on Facebook, check him out on Twitter. Charlie, any details on when the new book's coming yet? Any closer?
We're getting closer. Jeff is adding some parts, and then we'll have it out and ready to go soon as possible. I really wanted it done by an Acapulco, but it just didn't happen. But as soon as it's done, I'll get you an advance copy for sure. It'll be a good one. It'll be really timely about all of the empire of America collapsing. So
nice. I like the sound of that. I can't wait to check that out, dude. And some big news happening today over here in Europe, and really, quite disturbing scenes. I'm a bit of a kind of geek this way. I like old buildings, I like architecture. And Notre Dame Cathedral over in Paris, very iconic, symbolic building. And to watch that today, the flames, the fire that was engulfing it, and then to hear that the fire service over there, that they weren't even really trying to tackle the blaze. Latest I heard while we were on the show here, it came through breaking news that basically they don't think if they're even going to be able to save that building. Now, I just reported the story. You know what I do, guys? I give it a good 72 hours before I give any kind of theory or hypothesis on anything. And I was just disturbed straight off the bat to see this iconic structure burn into the ground, and quite symbolic. You know, we're in times of great change, especially here in Europe. A lot of talk about the Islamification of Europe as well. And I'm certainly not one that hates on anything Islamic, and I don't condemn over 1 billion people to the pits of hell just because they follow the Quran. Yes, there's bad actors that are Muslims, but that doesn't mean every Muslim is a bad person. And we see the number of Muslims in Europe rising, especially after what happened in the Middle East and North Africa. We see the boats coming all the time, things like that. And again, a lot of talk about how our Christian roots over here, or that Christian foundation, it's almost been swapped out, it's been changed over for this Islamic kind of tone. And Charlie, I don't know, but watching that today, something symbolic about all of this. And this is nothing conspiratorial from me. We're going to look at a couple of the things that are going around the internet. But just as a news story, you know, to watch this place burning, really, really disturbing, dude. And like I say, you know, almost symptomatic of the times we're in, dude. Great change.
Yeah, it's very sad to see.
Yeah.
It has such great history, amazing architecture. In a city known for amazing architecture, it stands out. I've been to Paris. I don't think I've been there, though. To watch it on fire was, you know what? It's funny. To see a symbolic building like that on fire actually kind of brought me back to 9/11 a little bit. And I'm not trying to make any sort of connection that there was terrorism involved in this, but you're sort of transfixed on the live feed of watching this thing burn, and you're thinking, God, I hope it doesn't burn all the way to the ground. I hope they can save it. I hope we find out that it was an electrical issue. It wasn't something intentional. There wasn't something more devious about it. It made me sick to see it. It's really, and I have no connection to churches and I'm not an architect or a fan necessarily of that, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the work and the history behind it, and to see it on fire is horrible. It also reminds me of World War II, places like Poland, and they were just leveled, and all that, and Berlin, all that amazing architecture totally destroyed. So we see this during wartime, and it sort of just all gets lumped in together. But then to pull it apart and see just one particular iconic building on fire like that is it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, John, I think they started building this in 1160, and it was 1345, I think, that they finally completed it. You know, it's very iconic. It's a symbol of Paris, really. You know, it's known throughout the world. You've got the Hunchback of Notre Dame, all that kind of stuff. Your thoughts on this, Johnny?
Well, it's quite sad to see it burning like that, Kevin. As you say, some of the pictures that we've seen, especially the aerial views, it just looked as if there was nothing left. But there is some good news, Kev, because prosecutors believe the fire started accidentally.
Good.
And that's based on the preliminary investigations. They later said they'd ruled out arson, and they don't believe the fire was terror-related, but the police will conduct a full investigation. Now, the thing is, they did save the 2 towers at the back, Kev.
Good.
And the building's actual structure is still there. So there is good news for it. Some of it can be preserved, and probably they will add to it. You know that, Kev. They'll know that they won't let this die. That's too big a building, and it's too important just to let go for a fire.
No, absolutely, Johnny. I agree with you. And of course, this comes in the Holy Week of Easter, and also after I put the video out today, Ryan Gable, who messaged me to say hi to you, Charlie, our mutual friend, he pointed out something that I had overlooked. I was just kind of thinking this was quite historic, quite a moment. I wanted to record that over on YouTube. No conspiracy, nothing like that. And then he tagged me in a post. April 15th, which is today, is the start of the Beltane Fire Festival. Now, again, that doesn't mean anything per se. It's an interesting fact. It doesn't mean that there's any giant conspiracy. I'm not saying that, folks. However, it is very, very interesting, Charlie, shall we say, that it happens on this week and on the day that the Fire Festival starts. And not only that, but on a day where Macron was due to address the nation about the Yellow Vest protests. And now he has declared a state of emergency. He isn't making that speech tonight. Quite interesting what's going on, really. And again, I'm not going conspiratorial, Charlie. I haven't got the tinfoil hat on just yet. I give it 72 hours, but some interesting information that.
Well, I would be disappointed, but not surprised if we saw Macron try to attach yellow vest protesters to this in some way. Now, that, of course, is conspiratorial. That's speculation on my part. But based on how these things go and the Rahm Emanuel philosophy of never let a good crisis go to waste, you might see something like that. So hopefully it is just a one-off situation where it was an accidental fire started with no sort of ill intent.
And there was renovations going on, you know, so I mean, it's not impossible that some wiring,
Sure.
you know, equipment, something like that. So yeah, let's hope there was nothing too nefarious with it, right?
Right. Let's hope that. I also remember there were renovations going on at the World Trade Centers too during the time of that. So sometimes those are used as diversions or as a ploy to get their people in position.
And that
This
today,
is speculation on my part, and I'm
yeah.
not even saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that this is how these things could play out. Of course, it doesn't really make much sense to
No.
do something against that building. So I
Never
I
let
really
a good
doubt
crisis
it has
go.
a connection, but
yeah.
nevertheless, that's what we do. We sort of we're one of the things we do is we look for the story behind the story to see if there's another layer to it. That there's something
sometimes-
going on that
yeah.
we don't know.
Sometimes it just is what it appears to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that said, though, like any good politician, you never let a crisis go to waste, right? And deliberate or not, Macron will be sitting with his feet up tonight with his creepy paedophile wife, his grandmother. No, it's his wife, that's right. And he'll be the happiest cat in France. He'll be sitting quaffing on his snails. He'll be sitting drinking his wine thinking, this is absolutely brilliant. I don't have to address all these people in the streets. And, you know, distraction. It certainly is one way, you know, of closing down probably a major part of Paris when there's all of these protests going on every single weekend as well. And I'm sure in the days to come, it'll already be over. I've not checked too much on the YouTube, but there's going to be various hypotheses and theories as to what's going on. We've seen attacks in the past in France, and I'm not calling this an attack, but deliberate attacks, definite attacks in the past, and they're very hesitant to ever admit that it's a terrorist attack. So, you know, there's obviously going to be talk of that. And today, I was looking through some of the news as this was breaking right enough, and this was quite interesting because it was somebody from Time magazine, a Time columnist called Christopher J. Hale, and he had tweeted out, and this was in the moments after this had all started, quote, a Jesuit friend in Paris who works in #Notre Dame told me that the cathedral staff said the fire was intentionally set. Now, he also goes on to say, I should note he has zero evidence beyond what the staff said, so qualify this in an unsubstantiated rumour. And then he pulled his tweet. He pulled the tweet down, and Paul Joseph Watson, he's been covering this. He's been talking about it. And again, because of the kind of angle that Paul takes on things, no criticism, but he talks a lot about the Islamification of Europe, stuff like that. And he certainly feels there might be more to this story. And that's no criticism of Paul, because I certainly don't know what's going on. I'm keeping an open mind to all of that. But it doesn't make sense to me, really, any kind of, like you said, setting fire to Notre Dame, one of the most iconic buildings. From Macron's point of view, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it would be probably a big score if ISIS did still exist. But I don't even think they've got a laptop in Syria anymore to claim responsibility for anything, right?
Well, if there's a fire in Notre Dame, then at least the heat isn't on Macron for once, you know. Any sort of distraction is good for him. I don't know that it would come at this price, although he is a wormy politician, so I don't think anything is off.
You
off
better
the
watch
table.
yourself. You watch yourself. His grandmother, his wife will be after you, Charlie. A
Well,
creepy,
listen,
creepy dude.
I don't, this is just history showing itself. History shows that politicians will distract when there's events that are painting them in a negative light. I'm actually, I am kind of kidding about this. I really don't think that it had anything to
No,
do
same here.
with terrorism. I think that this might just be something separate, but it's such a sad thing for a country that's had a rough time lately. They've had some legitimate protests and it seems like that was that's been, God, it's been going on for like 6 months now. It just seems to not really be ending anytime soon. So from a politician standpoint, anything that distracts from that is a good thing, even if it's something as horrible as one of the most iconic buildings in the world burning down. From their point of view, taking advantage of letting a crisis, letting having a crisis come and distract everyone. They're not above using that as a form of distraction, whether or not they manufactured it or not. I doubt it in this case.
No,
but
I'm with
possible.
you, dude. I'm with you. But I tell you, a weird, strange coincidence that did occur today. And again, it means nothing, right? This is just me saying the way my mind works. I found it a very strange day for this other story I'm about to bring out coming out. It's from the BBC, April 15th, 2019. The ruins of historic Boleskine House on Loch Ness are up for sale. Now, Boleskine House obviously belonged to Aleister Crowley. It's the place I went to with Billy Big Balls here, thinking I could do a ghost investigation, and got a lot more than I bargained for. But of course, that house was razed to the ground by fire. And it was somebody sent it to me. And both at the same time, we near enough said, kind of weird how this came out the same day, at the same time as we've got this massive fire going on over in Paris. And of course, people, who might not be aware what Beltane is, the main festival of Beltane is May the 1st. And we have big kind of protests over here in Europe on May the 1st. We have fire festivals as well. But it's a 2-week kind of build up to that. And that's why, when Ryan said today, April 15th, this is quite a key date. I think there might be something. This doesn't mean anything deliberate's going on, but it's almost as if there's something in the ether, something about this time, something that brings fire to the fore. And that's as much woo as I can give you, or as much conspiracy as I can give you on Notre Dame. I'm not telling anybody what to think about the fire. I've seen a lot of theories been thrown about there in the hours after it happened already. And I'm not here to criticize them or anything else because I've got my 72-hour rule and we'll see what happens, right? And on Wednesday when Ryan comes onto the show, we'll be able to dig more into this Beltane festival and put it into some kind of context. This isn't a one-off where you get one fire happening, just at this time of year. So we'll get into more of that on Wednesday night. And maybe I should start a GoFundMe campaign. Anyone want to chip in for Boleskine House? I'm only joking, folks. I'm only joking. But Johnny Whistles, let me come back to you, dude, because you brought up an interesting story here, and I'll let you put this to Charlie because I'd heard a little bit about this today. So on you go, man.
Yeah, Charlie, it's the fact that the Department of Justice, they're going to release the Mueller report on Tuesday.
Is this the unredacted version?
No, you're never going to get the unredacted version. Do you know what I mean? That's just not going to happen. But is there anything that we're going to find out about this which seemed to me just to be a total waste of time and money investigation? Are we going to learn anything from it?
I mean, I don't know. I'm in favor of them putting it out. The more information, the better. It depends on who's looking through it, though. I would imagine that MSNBC and CNN will find whatever it is they think they're setting out to find in there. They'll read between the lines and sort of discover some new great thing. And if they don't discover it, then they'll say, well, it was so secret that he couldn't put it in there. And then you'll go, okay. And it just never ends with them. I don't know what they'll find, to be honest with you. My guess is that it'll be more of the same, which is nothing. you know, the Russian collusion thing is nothing. If they want to find things, I always thought it was very weird that this was what they tried to strangle Donald Trump with, because there were so many other legitimate things that they could get him for, but they chose this one. And this, it always made me think that it was not so much to get him, but it was to set up an excuse for why Hillary Clinton lost, as a reason to set all of her investors' minds at ease, you know, that it wasn't her just being a bad candidate, it was that someone stole it from them. And therefore, the money that was given to her to finance, you know, her campaign and given to the Clinton Foundation for influence peddling wasn't necessarily lost by her, but therefore it was stolen. So that was why they went with it. It just seemed like a very weak argument that it was Russia collusion and that Trump was involved. I mean, they had a dozen other scandals to pick from to try and hang him on, and they chose the weakest one. And it's funny though, because they kept saying, well, you know, when Mueller comes out with his report, you know, we got to have the Republicans acknowledge that, you know, what he says, they gotta understand it, they gotta believe it, they gotta say he's independent. And, you know, you don't get to just, when it comes out, say, oh, we don't believe it because it's, you know, because it says something bad about our guy. And then it comes out, and what does the Democratic side do? They do the exact same thing that they were telling the Republicans not to do, which is say, oh, well, we don't really believe it, and we don't give it much credibility, and there's more to it than this, and don't believe everything you hear, and there's more. And you're just going, this is exactly what you were priming everybody else to do. You were telling everyone, now when this report comes out, you better believe it. And then the report comes out, and then they don't believe it. So I don't expect them to change their mind. They are, in poker terms, pot committed, meaning they're in. There is no advantage for them to fold their hand at this point. They've gone past the point of no return. So when this report comes out, my speculation is that they're just going to say, well, there's still more to it that didn't wind up in this report, and we can't tell you about it because it's too secret. It will get it, you know, it will cause even bigger problems. But believe us, just trust us. It's there. It's blah blah blah. And I say this, I'm no fan of the Republican Party either. I think they're both just despicable, but it is funny to watch them just stake their careers on this for 3 years and then have it come out and just be as underwhelming as it could be, and then them not give up on it, but just double down and triple down. Oh, when the full report comes out, then we'll have all the answers. Okay, well, what happens when it comes out and you don't have all the answers? Then what? Oh, well, then there's going to be some other story. It's never going to end.
See, Charlie's like me and Johnny. He trusts none of them. And that way you can go after all of them. Exactly. And, you know, I expect the fact that the fire will be fanned a little by the Assange thing. We're going to get, like you said at the start of the show, Charlie, a lot more talk about Russian collusion, all this kind of stuff. But when are they going to start going after the people who actually made up this bullcrap? You know, like the Christopher Steeles of this world, who put together a dossier that, you know, is absolutely full of crap. No chance of them ever facing any time, anything like that, is there? No.
Not in this universe.
No, not in this dimension, right?
No, we have to go to the other dimension. We have to go to one of those other countries that you're banned from, right? The ones that don't exist. Remember, didn't you get banned from like 200 countries?
Myself and the Geos got banned from 248 countries around the world. However, when you actually look, and the figures do vary because of Mandela effects and things, I laugh. I'm pretty sure there's only like 190 or so, 200 at the most. And I think Chris Geo is still proud of the fact that we got banned not only in this world, but beyond the veil. Well, you like how I done that there? Obviously, the name of Chris's show. But yeah. That was quite funny that night. And you know, were we talking about the kind of stuff that Julian Assange was kind of talking about, exposing cabal crimes? No. We were talking about Aya Life, a CBD product, and we were talking about the pyramids and ayahuasca. Yeah, really, people around the world really can't hear stuff like that. That must be really so threatening to things, Charlie, that has to be banned. And like you say, great you brought this up. Compare that to the live stream from Christchurch that was allowed to go out around the world, you know, to 190 or 248 countries in this world, and the next, nothing, no block put on that, right? Everyone allowed to watch it. But me, Chris, and Cherie get together for a conversation about Aya Life and ayahuasca. Crickets, gone.
Yeah, or you could have Childish Gambino's video, This Is America, where he simulates murdering people with machine guns, and that gets 500 million views. YouTube doesn't have a problem taking ad revenue from that, but God forbid you talk about three of my favorite things: the pyramids, ayahuasca, and CBD.
Of course,
That's the trifecta, man. That'll get you put into interdimensional YouTube jail.
Now, Johnny, I don't know if you were well at the time or not, but Charlie was kind enough to come on this show fresh from an ayahuasca experience, dude. Yes, Johnny's giving it a wow. He's muted up, but I'll wow for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'll wow for you again, Charlie. That must have been amazing. Ayahuasca.
And now Charlie's muted up. There he goes, see?
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, it was an experience.
It's Facebook. It's Facebook that's doing it. It's not us.
Yeah, they're banning me. They're banning me before I can, as the words are coming out of my mouth, they're muting me up. No, it was an experience. I'll tell you, the only thing that would have been better would have been doing that at the pyramids. That would have been something. That would have been a whole different experience. But yeah, for sure, we did the better part of half a show on that.
Come on, dude. Tell them the best bit about it, right? The whole purging experience.
Oh God, yeah. Everybody gets their own personal barf bucket for the experience, and it went on hour after hour. And I was telling Kev during the show that the one thing that was going through my mind, well, not the one thing, but one of the things that was going through my mind as I'm sitting there feeling as bad as I've ever felt was, this is going to be so great on the radio when I call Kev. I just couldn't wait to tell the story because it was so graphic and so ridiculous that I just felt like next year he's going to be right here next to me with a barf bucket of his own.
Oh, I tell you, dude, I really, before I depart this world for another dimension somewhere, I just have to try ayahuasca. I really, really do. And, it's everyone's free will to do what they want with their own body. So you can criticize it if you like. People can love it or hate it. My body, I definitely want to try it, dude. I've listened to Chris and Cherie talking about it, heard Frank Castle, heard you now. It fascinates me. And the fact that these shamans, they really work with this stuff in a way that takes it beyond just a psychedelic experience, in my opinion anyway, Charlie. But you've tried it, dude. I mean, is it just a trip? I think it's beyond that.
No, it's like look, it's been around for thousands of years. It's been instrumental. Graham Hancock has done a lot of work on these sculptures that they have where everybody is holding like a little purse. It all kind of looks like, and they kind of jokingly speculated maybe that's their stash,
Have
that's
you been
their
to see him
stash
yet?
of whatever. And he had said it might be.
Have you been to see Graham yet? Were you going to see his book reading?
He's coming to Denver in about 2 weeks, and he's having a book signing. I'm going to go say hi to him there. So I put him in my book. He was so instrumental in my book as well. John Perkins, Graham Hancock, and David Icke. I mean, and Ole Dammegard too. Just a lot of very important information that I got from them that I felt like needed to be in the book. So I'm going to go introduce myself, give him my book, and buy his book and say thanks.
Yeah, he's up there with Icke for me. I don't know if I've mentioned to anyone.
Yeah, me too.
David Icke will be coming on the show on May the 28th, just for anyone out there in this world or the next who might not know that. I think I've probably promoted that far too much already, but I cannot wait for that. And folks, you might think Icke might be the only big headliner coming on the show in the next immediate future, big, huge name. Trust me.
No, I'll be here.
Aside from you, Johnny, aside from Charlie, I am working on something that will literally take KBS and probably TFR with it to a completely different level. That's as far as I'm going just now. Watch this space. But let me thank Charlie Robinson for a brilliant conversation tonight at short notice, Charlie. And that 1 hour we had last week, it just wasn't enough for me to get my fix of you, dude. Yeah. So, folks, visit The Octopus of Global Control. Get the book as well. Charlie will be back this time next month or sometime next month. Until next time, wherever you are, make it TFR.
And didn't touch that dial.
Ah, there it is. There it is. Later, folks.